Welcome back, everybody, to the Rykeen channel and to a brand new addition to the Lag and Lore podcast. Before we dive in today, I want to quickly explain how we are structuring things moving forward. Every single week, alongside our main group episodes where Rykeen, Alex, and Josh talk about the current state of the game, the meta, and their raid progression with the Plated Nightowls, I am going to be dropping a bonus solo episode dedicated entirely to the lore. Think of these as companion pieces that go in tandem with our main discussions. For example, our main episode 1 was our Into the Void Storm deep dive where the guys talked about the world of Warcraft, midnight launch, class balance, and the absolute pain of the Mythic Plus pool. But episode 1, Lore, which is what you are listening to right now, is a completely different beast. If you're looking for Rykeen and the boys yelling about depleted keystones, check out the main episodes. But if you want the deep, rich history of the Warcraft universe that makes all of that endgame grinding actually matter, you are in the right place. These bonus drops are just going to be you, me, a hot cup of coffee, and the epic backstory of Azeroth. And if we are going to understand what is happening right now in Midnight, with Xal'atath, the Void Storm, and this massive cosmic threat pressing in on Silvermoon, we have to go back. Way back. Before the Alliance and the Horde. Before humans, orcs, or elves. Before Azeroth even had a name. We are going back to the literal creation of the Warcraft universe. I'm going to be heavily referencing World of Warcraft, Chronicle Volume 1 for this, which is basically the definitive historical Bible for Warcraft lore. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend picking up a copy. The light, the void, and the great dark beyond, so, let's set the stage. In the beginning, there was no physical universe. There was no twisting nether. There were only two fundamental, opposing forces, the light and the void. The light was this boundless, prismatic sea of living energy. It was joyful, expanding, and dynamic. But because the light was constantly expanding, moving outward across existence, some patches of energy inevitably faded. Where the light faded, the void rushed in to fill the emptiness. The void is the exact opposite of the light. It is a dark, vampiric force driven to devour all energy and twist creation inward upon itself. For an eternity, these two forces pushed and pulled against one another. But eventually, the tension reached a breaking point. The light and the void violently collided, and that cataclysmic explosion ignited the creation of the physical universe. We call this physical universe the Great Dark Beyond. It's the cosmos where Azeroth, Argus, Draenor, and countless other worlds exist. At the exact same time, the volatile energies bleeding off from that cosmic collision created a parallel dimension outside the physical realm. This dimension is a place of absolute chaos and rampant magic. We know it as the Twisting Nether. It's where demons are born. But we'll get to the demons another time, because right now, we need to talk about what woke up in the Great Dark Beyond. The awakening of the Titans. When the universe was formed, shards of light were flung across the cosmos. These shards coalesced to form the stars and the planets. Deep within the fiery cores of a select few of these new planets, something miraculous happened. A spark of life took hold. These were world souls, infant cosmic entities slumbering beneath the crust of entire worlds. The first of these world souls to awaken was a Manthal. He was a Titan. Imagine a being so massive that a planet is just a marble to him. A being made of starlight, arcane magic, and creation itself. A Manthal woke up alone in the infinite dark. He sensed that he couldn't be the only one, so he began to wander the cosmos, searching for others of his kind. Over countless millennia, Manthal found other slumbering world souls. He carefully nurtured them, waking them up one by one. Ionar the Lifebinder, Norgannon the Lawkeeper, Golganath the Lord of Skies and Oceans, Khaz'goroth the Shaper and Forger, and Agramar and Sargeras, the two greatest warriors of their kind. Together, they formed the Pantheon. The Pantheon had one singular mission, to search the Great Dark Beyond for more world souls and protect them until they could awaken. They were beings of order. When they found a planet, they would shape it, organize its elements, plant the seeds of life, and move on. The Void Lords and the parasitic old gods. But while the Titans were exploring the physical universe, the Void was watching. The entities that rule the Void are called the Void Lords. They are beings of pure, ravenous darkness. They watched the Pantheon reshaping the universe, and they were envious of the Titans' power. The Void Lords wanted to corrupt a Titan, to turn one of these massive cosmic beings into an instrument of the Void. If they could do that, they could consume the entire universe. There was just one problem. The Void Lords cannot easily manifest in the physical universe. Their energy bleeds out too quickly in the Great Dark Beyond. They needed a vessel. They needed to corrupt a Titan before it woke up, while it was still a vulnerable world soul inside a planet. Since they didn't know which planets actually contained world souls, the Void Lords just started throwing things at the wall to see what stuck. They pooled their dark power and created horrific, parasitic entities made of nightmare and flesh. They hurled these entities blindly out into the cosmos, hoping they would crash into a planet that contained a sleeping Titan. These parasitic horrors, the old gods. For ages, the old gods hurtled through the dark. Eventually, 4 of them crashed into a small, unassuming planet. A planet that, unbeknownst to the Pantheon, contained the single most powerful world soul in the entire universe. A world soul so full of potential that, if she ever woke up, she would be more powerful than Amanthal and Sargeras combined. That planet was Azeroth. The Black Empire. When the 4 old gods, Stun, Yogg-Saron, N'Zoth, and Ishaj, slammed into Azeroth, they immediately went to work. They embedded themselves deep into the planet's crust, spreading their tendrils down toward the sleeping world soul like a cancerous infection. From their oozing, blighted bodies, they spawned 2 terrible races to serve as their armies. The first were the Faceless Ones, the Enraki, who served as their ruthless commanders. The second were the Akir, an endless swarm of insectoid horrors. Together, these forces conquered the chaotic elemental lords who already lived on Azeroth, Ragnaros, Therazane, Alakir, and Neptulan. The old gods built a civilization of suffering and madness across the entire surface of Azeroth. Massive temple cities of black stone and mutated flesh rose into the sky. This was the Black Empire. For thousands of years, the Black Empire ruled uncontested, slowly digging deeper and deeper, whispering madness into the dreams of the slumbering world soul. And then, the Pantheon finally found them. The fall of Ishaj and the Well of Eternity. It was Agramar, the great Titan warrior, who first heard the sleeping world soul's dreams. He traveled to Azeroth and was horrified by what he saw. The planet was completely encased in void energies, dominated entirely by the Black Empire. Agramar rushed back to the Pantheon with the news. This was the exact nightmare scenario they had feared. The Void Lords had found a world soul, and not just any world soul, but the most powerful one in existence. Sargeras, who had already been fighting demons across the universe, suggested that the only way to save the universe was to cleave Azeroth in half. He wanted to destroy the world soul so the Void could never claim it. But Iana the Lifebinder refused. She argued that they had to try to save her. Ultimately, the Pantheon agreed to fight. But the Titans faced a massive logistical problem. They were simply too big. Their bodies were larger than the planet itself. If they physically reached down to crush the old gods, the sheer force of their hands would shatter the crust of the planet and kill the world soul inside. So, they decided to forge an army. Khaz'goroth built massive, metallic molds, and Amanthal breathed life into them. They created the Titan Forged. The greatest among them were the Keepers, beings like Odin, Ra, Freya, Thorim, and Tyr. If you've raided Uldua or explored Uldum, you know exactly who these guys are. The Keepers were imbued with the specific powers of the Pantheon. Underneath the Keepers were armies of lesser Titan Forged, the Earthen, made of stone, the Mechagnomes, made of metal, and the Vrykul, the towering iron-skinned ancestors of humanity. The Pantheon sent the Titan Forged down to the surface of Azeroth to wage war against the Black Empire. The war was absolutely apocalyptic. The Titan Forged first had to defeat and banish the Elemental Lords into the Elemental Plane. Once the elements were out of the way, the Keepers turned their attention to the old gods themselves. They focused all their might on the most powerful of the 4, Ishaj, a monstrous entity with 7 massive heads that covered a huge portion of the planet. But even the combined might of the Keepers wasn't enough to bring down Ishaj. The old god was too deeply entrenched. The Titan Forged were losing the battle. Up in the great dark beyond, Amanthal saw his creations falling. He realized they were going to lose the planet. Out of desperation, the High Father of the Pantheon did the one thing they promised they wouldn't do. He reached down through the skies of Azeroth himself. Amanthal grabbed hold of Ishaj's colossal, fleshy bulk, and he ripped the old god clean out of the crust of the planet. Ishaj was torn apart. His massive, dying form fell back down to the earth, crushing mountains and shattering continents. But because the old gods had embedded their tendrils so deeply into the planet, pulling Ishaj out was like ripping a tick out of your arm but leaving the head inside. It caused catastrophic collateral damage. A massive, gaping wound was torn into the surface of Azeroth. From that wound, the volatile, arcane lifeblood of the world soul began to erupt, bleeding out into the world. The Titans were horrified. They realized they couldn't physically pull the other old gods out, or Azeroth would literally bleed to death. The remaining old gods, Stun, Yogg-Saron, and Enzoth, would have to be defeated, contained, and imprisoned deep underground instead of destroyed. The Keepers quickly went to work containing the damage. They crafted massive magical wards around the gaping wound where Ishaj had been ripped out, stopping the hemorrhaging. The volatile arcane blood calmed and settled into an endless, shimmering lake of pure magical energy. We know that lake today as the Well of Eternity. It is the very source of arcane magic on Azeroth, and it is the entire reason the elves evolved the way they did. Once the bleeding was stopped, the Keepers successfully defeated the remaining old gods, locking them away in massive Titan-forged prison complexes. Ulduar was built for Yogg-Saron, and Ankh-Iraj for Stun. The Keepers ordered the world, built the Emerald Dream as a pristine evolutionary blueprint for the planet, and prepared to leave. The rise of the dragon aspects, but before they could truly step back, a new threat emerged, not from the void, but from the wild, primitive life that was finally flourishing on Azeroth. And this is a crucial piece of lore, because it explains how we got the dragons. The Titans didn't just magically put the dragon aspects into existence. At this point in history, the skies of Azeroth were dominated by proto-dragons. They were savage, primal beasts. And the absolute apex predator among them was a gargantuan proto-dragon named Galakrond. Galakrond was so massive that his wings cast shadows over entire mountain ranges. But he wasn't just hunting for food, he was consumed by an insatiable, unnatural hunger. He began cannibalizing other proto-dragons. The more he ate of his own kind, the more he mutated. He grew grotesque, sprouting extra limbs and dozens of eyes. Worse, the proto-dragons he devoured didn't stay dead. They were regurgitated as mindless, rotting undead beasts that served him. It was a terrifying, necrotic plague sweeping across the planet. The Keepers watched this happening, but most of them were exhausted from the war with the Black Empire and didn't want to intervene. They felt the primitive races needed to fend for themselves. But one Keeper refused to stand by and watch. That was Tyr, the greatest warrior of the Titan Forged. Tyr saw that 5 smaller, highly intelligent proto-dragons were actively trying to fight back against Galakrond. Their names were Alexstrasza, Ysera, Neltharion, Malygos, and Nosdormu. Tyr teamed up with these 5 proto-dragons. The battle against Galakrond was brutal. At one point, Galakrond actually bit off Tyr's hand, which is why Tyr later forged a replacement out of pure silver, giving us the legend of the Silver Hand, which the Paladin Order would adopt thousands of years later. Through sheer teamwork and Tyr's guidance, the 5 proto-dragons managed to force a massive boulder down Galakrond's throat, choking the monstrous beast to death in the frozen wastes of Dragonblight. Tyr took this victory back to the other Keepers. He convinced them that these 5 proto-dragons had proven they had the courage, the intelligence, and the heart to protect Azeroth. The Keepers agreed. They channeled the immense cosmic power of the Pantheon directly into Alexstrasza, Ysera, Neltharion, Malygos, and Nosdormu. They were physically transformed. They became the majestic, intelligent beings we know today. They became the dragon aspects. They were charged with guarding the world, Alexstrasza watching over life, Ysera guarding the Emerald Dream, Nosdormu policing time itself, Malygos protecting arcane magic, and Neltharion, the Earth Warder, watching over the deep places of the Earth. Of course, we all know the tragic irony of that last one. By assigning Neltharion to protect the deep places of the Earth, the Keepers unknowingly put him right next to the prisons of the old gods. The very prisons they had just built. Over thousands of years, those void whispers seeped into Neltharion's mind, driving him insane and eventually transforming him into Deathwing. Tying it back to midnight, and that perfectly brings us back to the present day. Because those prisons didn't hold forever. The whispers leaked out. And now, as we push into midnight, we are seeing the direct, modern consequences of this ancient cosmic war. The Void didn't give up. The Black Empire might have fallen, but Xal'atath is picking up the pieces. And that world soul, the one the Pantheon fought so hard to protect, is still the ultimate prize. Everything happening in the game right now, the Void Storm over Zalaman, the corruption in Haranda, the battles in the Voidspire, it all traces directly back to those parasitic horrors being thrown blindly into the dark by the Void Lords, and the desperate measures the Keepers took to stop them. Understanding this lore changes the way you look at the game. When you're running a Mythic plus key in the underbelly of Silvermoon, or doing a bountiful delve, you aren't just fighting generic purple monsters. You are fighting the echoes of a war that predates the physical universe itself. We'll wrap it up there for our first lore deep dive. Next time we do a solo lore episode, we're going to talk about Sargerers. We're going to cover what happened when the Pantheon's greatest champion discovered the truth about the Void Lords, why he lost his mind, and how he created the Burning Legion to burn the universe to ash. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed this format, please leave a comment down below and let me know what piece of Warcraft history you want me to cover next. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, keep your frames high and your temps low. This is Andy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode.